This week's topic will be the discussion of the tefillah of Aleinu L'Shabeach, some of the halachas, trying to describe the importance of the tefillah. Once again, this should not be relied upon for halachic psak, and as always, a Rav should be consulted. The sixth parak in Yeshua describes at length the process that Klal Yisrael had when they were just circling the walls of Yericho. It says that each day they circled Yericho once with trumpets and with the Aron HaKodesh, and on the seventh day they circled it 7 times, and they blew shofar, and the walls miraculously fell. So the Me'alo is based on teachings of the Arizal, based on Rishonim, as we'll see from Rav Haigon. He writes that on the 7th day, when the Jews were circling Yericho 7 times, that was when Yehoshua created the tefillah of Aleinu L'Shabeach. He says, "V'du'u shebiyom hashvi hazeh hiskin Yeshua hanusach Aleinu L'Shabeach shanu oim b'kol yom." That was the day that Yeshua created the tefillah Aleinu L'Shabeach, at least the first half until Al Kain. And he says that Yeshua said it frontwards and backwards, meaning from beginning to end, straight, and then he said it 7 times, and he said it backwards 7 times, with special Kabbalistic understandings. And based on that, with this intense meditation on these words, and based on the beauty of the tefillah of Aleinu L'Shabeach and how it praises Hashem, miraculously the walls fell. And he adds, actually interesting enough, based on the Rishonim, that Yeshua's name was is actually hinted in the tefillah. He says that Yeshua originally, before Moshe changed his name to Yehoshua, originally it was Hosea, and Yeshua ben Nun left his name secretly in the tefillah, but because he was such an anav, he didn't write it Yehoshua, he wrote it as Hosea, sort of to tell Klal Yisrael that even though he's leading now and he's taking over Moshe Rabbeinu, he doesn't look at himself as Yehoshua, he looks at himself like the way he was younger, as Hosea. And the Masorah is that the letter Hey from Hu Elokeinu Ein Od is the Hey is for Hosea, the Vav from Anachnu Mishtachavim Korim Mishtachavim, that's for the Vav from Hosea, the Shin from Shalo Asanu Kagaya Haratzos, and the Ayin from the word Aleinu spells out the name Hosea to remind us as a simple hint that Yeshua ben Nun wrote the Tefillah. The Chidah in Machzik Bracha Siman Kuf Lamed Beis Sif Beis also writes this, that he has a Kabbalah from Rav Haigon, one of the great Gaonim, that Aleinu L'Shabeach was written by Yehoshua, and after the Churban, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, one of the Tanaim, instituted for all of us to say it 3 times a day. And he adds these words, V'yesh lomar oso b'kavana ba'atifas rosh, and you should have with a tremendous amount of concentration when you're saying this bracha, saying this tefillah, mipnei she'ein shevach kamo liyotzreinu. There is no greater tefillah in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu than Aleinu. And it's the greatest praise that Hashem has is from the tefillah of Aleinu. It's unbelievable in its own right, but the man always continues, and he says, again, this is all based. The Shla also writes this, that Kol Mishu Bal Nefesh Yomer Hashevach Hazeh Bekavana Atzuma, that you should say this with a tremendous amount of concentration. Uba'oso Shah Sha'omer Yisrael Aleinu, and when Klal Yisrael says Aleinu in Shul, Hakadosh Baruch Hu and all His angels, Omrim Ashrei Ha'am Shekachalo Ashrei Ha'am She'Hashem Elokav. It's an unbelievable thing, and he continues that there was a Kabbalah that even the Chidah also had, that if a person is in danger, they would say Aleinu with special concentrations, and they would say it in a certain way as a protection. That Rav Yaakov Emden in his Siddur, in Pirush Tfilas Aleinu, he quotes Kabbalistic understandings for the Tefillah, and he says, and he writes the following from the Chidah, that if you say it with enough concentration, it's a tremendous skula. It protects you from tsaras, from pain. from any type of calamity. So obviously, it's something we should say with a lot of concentration. We should have a lot of focus on it. The Mem Lois continues to quote from Svarim that it's a shame that people say it while they're running out of shul. It's such an important tefillah. The Shlah in Kitzur HaShlah actually adds that it's also a skula to say a couple psukim. It's printed in the Siddur. Al tira mipachat pisom u'masuas risham kisavo. It's printed after Aleinu that these 3 or 4 psukim are also a skula for protection. And he says that if you can't say it because Kaddish, the Chazan is saying Kaddish, you should answer Kaddish, but afterwards you should say it. It's very important. In addition, the Mishnah Berurah in Kuf Lamed Beis of Katan Vav writes that every different nusach, Ari, Sfard, Ashkenaz, Edut Mizrach, they all have different versions of Aleinu, and one should follow the nusach of his siddur, because it's all written with Kabbalistic intentions, and therefore you shouldn't play around. You should say exactly the way it's said in your siddur. Now, the reason why it's said after davening, the Bach, interesting enough, in Siman Kuf Lamed Gimel gives a very basic, very interesting answer. He says the reason why it's said after davening is because the main intention of the tefillah is to ingrain in Klal Yisrael that we have the only God, the only true God, and we're not like Shaloah Sanu Kegei Aratzos, that we're not like the other nations. Shehem Mishtachavim Lehevav V'Larik, they bow down to nothing, and we V'anachnu Korim Mishtachavim Modim, that we bow down to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So says the Bach, the reason why it's supposed to be said at the end of the davening is because people then are leaving. They finish davening, they go to work. So and then they're going to be dealing with non-Jews, and they're going to be dealing in the non-Jewish world. They're going out to the real world. So therefore, you shouldn't think about idolatry at all, chas v'shalom. When you're going to your work, you should just think about Hashem. He says, Hatamu l'tko b'levavenu, that it's in order to ingrain in our hearts, kodin sheniftarim b'vteihem, before we go out to our lives to go to work, yichud malchus shamayim. We should think of that about the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'shechazek b'levavenu amunazu, and we should ingrain us in this faith, shi'av ha'gelulim in haaretz, that we should get rid of all idols. He skips a couple bit. I'll skip a little bit. He says, because we know that most people work with non-Jews. And therefore we shouldn't, heaven forbid, we shouldn't think about doing idol worship. And therefore the purpose of saying it at the end of davening is sort of, that's the last thing you want to think about before you go out to the real world. So some Achronim point to the Bach as an explanation for the custom that some people had, that the Mishnah Berurah quotes, that if they would daven Mincha and Ma'ariv right back to back, today, even if you daven Mincha Ma'ariv back to back, we say Aleinu in between. But there were places in Europe where they wouldn't say Aleinu, and so a lot of Mefarshim don't understand why would that be the case? Why wouldn't they say Aleinu? So according to the Bach, it makes a lot of sense, because if you're not leaving shul in between, even though you finish Mincha, there's no reason to say Aleinu according to the Bach. Similarly, we don't say Aleinu after Shachris on Shabbos, right? We just go straight from, we only say Aleinu at the end of Musaf, according to many people, according to most Nuschos, and that would be explained based on the Bach, because according to the Bach, the purpose of this is that when we leave the shul, that should be the last tefillah, but if we're staying in shul to daven Musaf, maybe perhaps there's no reason to do it, there's no reason to say Aleinu after Shachris. However, Rav Yaakov Emden in his Siddur writes that there are Kabbalistic reasons for saying Aleinu at the end of davening, Kabbalistic reasons that I for sure can't understand, but based on this, the Kaf HaChaim and Siman Kuf Lamed Beis Ois Yud Aleph and Siman Tafresh Chav Beis Ois Vav writes that according to this Kabbalistic understanding, you should say it at the end of every tefillah, even if you don't plan on leaving the shul, meaning, let's say Yom Kippur, where they're going to have Musaf and Mincha right back to back, they're not leaving shul, perhaps according to the Bach, you wouldn't say Aleinu, but says the Kaf HaChaim, you should say Aleinu based on the Kabbalistic understandings of the Arizal. Once again, and the Tami HaMinhagim actually says that the Mirav Mikosov, that he would say it after Shachris, even though he was staying from Musaf, he would still say it after Shachris. There's a lot more halachas in Aleinu, perhaps we'll do it at a later date, but that's why it's so important to follow your nosach, because there's a tremendous amount of Kabbalistic understandings, there's a tremendous amount of cheshbonos, as they say, going into making these type of decisions, and that's why you should follow your nosach. It was all written based on Kabbalah, based on Halacha. Any questions can be sent to avizakatinsky@gmail.com. That's AVIZAKUTINSKY@gmail.com.